I want you to picture the setting for a second. It's not just a prison.
No, it's really a dungeon.
Right, a literal pit. The text actually calls it the pit inside the house of the captain of the guard. So it's underground, it's incredibly dark, it likely smells just absolutely terrible. And you are stuck in there with two men who are watching their careers, and maybe their lives, go up in smoke.
And we aren't talking about petty thieves here. These are two of the most powerful men in the country, barring Pharaoh himself,
Right.
chief cupbearer and the chief baker. In the geopolitical landscape of ancient Egypt, I mean, these aren't kitchen staff. These are high-level cabinet members with top-tier security clearance.
Exactly. These are guys who have the direct ear of the king, or, well, at least they did. Now they've been thrown into this hole because they offended Pharaoh, so the tension is already through the roof. But then one morning, the whole vibe shifts from just depressed to absolutely terrified.
Because they both had dreams.
Yes, and that is exactly where we are starting today. We are doing a deep dive into Genesis chapter 40, the story of Joseph in prison. But, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, I know this story, Joseph interprets the dreams, gets a promotion, end of story, you really need to pump the brakes.
Yeah, the Sunday school version usually skips all the fascinating forensic details. And we aren't just retelling a story today. We have a massive stack of sources here that act like a magnifying glass on this text.
We've got archaeological papers on ancient Egyptian dream psychology, some really heavy Jewish mystical commentary from Chabad, a Christian educational study on empathy, and a breakdown of biblical typology that honestly reads like a detective novel.
Our mission today is to unpack all of this. We're going to cover everything from why kissing your husband in an Egyptian dream was considered a terrible omen, to the profound linguistic difference between memory and empathy.
And finally, why Joseph might just be the most specific foreshadowing of Jesus in the entire Old Testament. It's a mix of history, psychology, and theology.
It's going to be a fascinating ride.
So let's get back to that dungeon. The cupbearer and the baker are panicked. Joseph, who was basically the inmate trustee running the place, which, by the way, is a whole other story, he asked them why they look so terrible. And they say, we have dreamed a dream, and there's no interpreter of it. Now, I have to ask, why is that such a crisis?
Right.
I mean, I have weird dreams all the time.
Yeah.
I don't wake up sweating and terrified about it.
Well, that's where the archaeological and psychological sources give us some deeply necessary context. Because, frankly, we live in a post-Freudian world.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning if you dream about losing your teeth or, showing up to work naked, you wake up and think, oh, I'm stressed, or I ate those spicy wings way too close to bedtime.
Yeah, it's just my brain firing off random neurons while I sleep.
Exactly. You view it as internal processing, but to an ancient Egyptian, that worldview simply did not exist. Dreams were external.
External, like someone sending a letter.
Yes, they were seen as literal gateways. A dream was a message from the divine realm, or sometimes from the dead, breaking into your reality. It was actually a highly organized practice called dream incubation.
Dream incubation. That sounds like a sci-fi term.
It does, but it was a very serious, widespread ritual. People would fast, purify themselves, and actually sleep in specific temples just to solicit these messages from the gods. The Egyptians even had dream books that were used by lector priests.
Wait, dream books? Like dictionaries for dreams?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They were coding manuals. If you see X, it means Y.
So these two cabinet members wake up with these incredibly vivid images. They know it's a message, but they don't have the manual.
Right. They are entirely cut off from the priest because they're essentially in solitary confinement.
And the stakes for them are literally life and death.
Exactly. And the sources mention the Egyptian concept of opposites in these dream books. The interpretations weren't always literal.
What do you mean by opposites?
Well, for instance, there's a record showing that if a woman dreamed of kissing her husband, it didn't mean a happy marriage. It was actually interpreted as a sign of trouble or deep conflict.
Wait, really? Kissing your husband equals trouble?
In their system, yes.
Wow, no wonder these guys were stressed out. I mean, they probably had these vivid images, and knowing that system of opposites, had zero idea if a good image meant death or if a bad image meant life.
That ambiguity is total torture for them.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where Joseph enters the chat. And notice what he does. He doesn't offer to go check a manual. He doesn't claim to be a magician.
He just asks a question. He says, do not interpretations belong to God?
That is a massive theological pivot right there. He completely strips away the ritual, the magic, the temple incubation, and he says the sovereignty of God reaches even down into this pit.
He's claiming a direct line to the source.
Yes. He shifts the entire focus from decoding a puzzle to receiving a revelation.
Which is pretty bold for a guy wearing prison rags. He's basically saying, I don't need a handbook, I have a connection. So let's look at the data, the dreams themselves.
Right, the cupbearer goes first.
He sees a vine, 3 branches, it blossoms, grapes appear, and he squeezes them into Pharaoh's cup.
It's a dream of action and service. The vine blossoms, he takes the grapes, he presses them, and Joseph clocks it immediately. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, you get your job back.
Which is great news for the cupbearer. He is incredibly relieved.
But then the baker is watching all of this unfold. He sees the cupbearer get a thumbs up, so he steps forward. Hey, me next.
It's a really tragic moment of false hope. The baker says, I also had a dream. 3 baskets of white bread on my head, but the birds were eating the baked goods out of the top basket.
And Joseph doesn't hesitate. He gives the interpretation immediately, but it is not what the baker wants to hear.
Not all.
The 3 baskets are also 3 days. But in 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off of you, literally execute him, and the birds will eat his flesh.
Talk about a heavy silence in the room after that one. One lives, one dies.
Yeah.
But before we find out if Joseph was right, and spoiler alert, I want to pivot to something one of our sources, the educational study on Christian perspectives focused on. It's about the interaction right after the good interpretation.
Yes, this is a beautiful detail.
Joseph turns to the cupbearer and he says, but when all goes well with you, remember me.
This is such a key insight for understanding Joseph's character. You know, we so often view these biblical figures as these stoic superheroes, like they're statues made of marble.
Right, totally unbothered by their circumstances.
Exactly. But here we see profound vulnerability. Joseph isn't just making a casual networking request, he is pleading.
He says, show me kindness, mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house.
Yeah.
He's basically looking at this guy and saying, please do not leave me here.
The source really highlights the Hebrew word used here. It's zakar, which translates to remember. But in the Hebrew context, zakar isn't just cognitive recall.
What do you mean? It's not just like having a thought pop into your head while you're driving.
No, not at all. It's not like remembering where you left your keys.
Okay.
Zakar implies action. It implies acting compassionately on behalf of someone else. When the text says God remembered Noah, it doesn't mean God forgot him for a while and then suddenly remembered he existed.
Right, it means God moved to save him.
Exactly. So Joseph isn't just asking to be kept in mind, he is asking for active empathy.
That distinction is huge. It's the difference between thinking, oh yeah, that guy Joseph back in prison was nice, and actually using your political capital to help him.
Correct. And the study points out that this text is often used to teach social competence and empathy today. It really highlights the pain of being invisible.
Because Joseph has been in a pit, he was sold into slavery by his own family, falsely accused of assault, and now thrown in a dungeon.
His plea is the plea of a human being experiencing deep trauma, completely desperate to be seen and not forgotten.
It really grounds the story. He's right in the thick of the suffering. But here is where it gets really interesting. Or as I like to say, this is where we put on our detective hats.
Yes, the typology study.
Exactly. We have this source that outlines over 100 parallels between Joseph and Jesus.
Typology is fascinating. It's the study of how characters or events in the Old Testament foreshadow or set a pattern for the New Testament. And the parallels here are, frankly, forensic in their detail.
It's almost eerie when you list them out. So let's run through some of the big ones found specifically in this prison narrative.
We'll start with the crime itself. Both Joseph and Jesus were falsely accused.
Right.
And neither of them defended themselves against the charges in a way that stopped the injustice. They both simply submitted to the arrest.
And then look at the company they kept. Joseph is in prison with 2 criminals, the cupbearer and the baker. Jesus was crucified between 2 criminals, the 2 thieves.
And look at the outcomes for those criminals. It's the exact same architecture. In both stories, one is saved, restored to his position, or in the case of the thief on the cross, promised paradise.
And the other is lost, executed, or perishes.
Exactly. One saved, one lost.
That seriously gave me chills when I read it. And then there are the elements in the dreams themselves. What do we have? We had bread and wine.
Yes. The cupbearer deals with the wine, the cup. The baker deals with the bread. These perfectly mirror the elements of the Last Supper.
And the timeline. Joseph predicts the outcome will happen in 3 days.
Just as Christ is raised up on the 3rd day. In Joseph's story, the servants are raised up one to life, one to death on the third day, which happened to be Pharaoh's birthday. The narrative structure is practically identical.
There are even details about the betrayal that happened earlier in Joseph's life. He was sold by his brothers for pieces of silver. Jesus was betrayed for pieces of silver.
Joseph was stripped of his coat, Jesus was stripped of his robe.
It really creates this compelling argument that the story of Joseph isn't just a biography of an ancient leader.
No, the source argues it's a prefiguration of the Messiah. It's a pattern of suffering, a descent into the pit, and an eventual exaltation to the right hand of power.
It changes how you read the whole chapter. It stops being just a story about a guy who is good at interpreting dreams and starts looking like a map of history.
That's the argument the typology study makes. It suggests a single author behind the history, creating a redemptive pattern. It signals to the reader that this suffering isn't random. It's leading to a specific kind of salvation.
So we have the psychology of the dreams, and we have the theology of the symbols. Now I want to look at the philosophy of the dreams.
The Shabbat source.
Yes, we have this source from Shabbat, which offers a Jewish mystical perspective on why Joseph's dreams were fundamentally different from the dreams of those around him.
This is a really fascinating distinction, and it has to do with the nature of work.
Yeah, lay this out for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually we just lump all the dreams together as prophecy and leave it at that.
Right. Well, the commentary invites us to compare Pharaoh's later dreams, the ones about the cows and the grain and the servants' dreams, with Joseph's original dreams about the sheaves of wheat.
Right, because way back when he was a kid, Joseph dreamed his brother's sheaves of wheat bowed down to his.
Exactly. And the commentary points out that Joseph's dreams involved work. They were gathering sheaves, there was labor involved.
Okay.
It represented a progression, taking something from the earth and elevating it through human effort.
Whereas Pharaoh's dreams.
In Pharaoh's dreams, the subjects are entirely passive. The cows are just standing by the river, and the dream represents regression. The healthy cows are eaten by the sick ones. The good is consumed by the bad.
So the deep insight here is about the nature of effort.
Precisely. The mystical perspective here is that things received for free or without effort do not endure. Unholiness is linked to that lack of effort and regression.
Interesting.
Holiness, in contrast, implies existence, work, and progression. Joseph's worldview saw the earthly labor and the heavenly reality as one interconnected thing.
That is such a cool way to look at it. Joseph is the worker. He's the one actively interpreting, actively managing the prison. He's not just passive.
Even in prison, he is working. He is engaging. He earns the vessel for the blessing, so to speak.
Which brings us to the most painful part of this entire story, the theology of delay.
Yes.
Because Joseph does the work. He interprets the dreams perfectly. The third day comes. The baker is executed. The cupbearer is restored to his job, handing the cup to Pharaoh. Joseph must be thinking, any minute now, the guards are coming to release me.
And then we get Genesis 40.23. Yet did not the chief cupbearer remember Joseph, but forget him.
Ouch, but forget him.
And according to our sources, this delay isn't just a weekend. It lasts 2 full years.
2 years. I want you to quantify that for a second. That is roughly 700 nights. 700 nights of going to sleep on a stone floor, wondering if the cupbearer just got busy or if he really just didn't care.
Joseph is approximately 28 years old when he interprets the dreams. He doesn't get out until he is 30. These are the prime years of his young adulthood, wasted seemingly in a dungeon.
Why? I mean, from a narrative perspective or a theological one, why the delay? This feels incredibly cruel.
This is where we really have to zoom out. If the cupbearer had mentioned Joseph immediately, say, a week later, Pharaoh might have released him. He might have said, okay, let the kid go.
And if he went home?
He likely would have returned straight to Canaan. He would have left Egypt entirely.
Which means he wouldn't have been there 2 years later when Pharaoh had his specific nightmare about the coming famine.
Exactly. Joseph needed to be in close proximity to power at the precise moment the crisis began. If he gets out early, he saves himself, but he doesn't save the region from starvation.
So the delay synchronized his release with the salvation of the nation.
It's a brutal lesson in divine timing. The delay wasn't a denial, it was a setup.
But try telling that to Joseph on night number 400. That's incredibly hard.
And that is where the concept of hypomone comes in, which the educational sources discuss. It's the Hebrew and Greek concept often translated as patience, but that word is really too soft. It actually means endurance.
It's not just sitting in a waiting room reading a magazine.
No, it is active trust. It's remaining under the load without collapsing. This 2-year period likely honed Joseph's faith and character in a way that immediate release wouldn't have. He had to learn that his salvation wasn't coming from a human connection, the cupbearer, but from God alone.
And there is one more layer to this timing, which connects back to the typology we discussed. The source mentions an interesting pattern regarding the Gentile bride.
Right. This is for the people who really love the deep theological mapping.
Yeah, break this down because it's an interesting view.
So we are impartially reporting on what some theologians map out here. The observation is that Joseph takes a Gentile bride, Asenath, during his time of exaltation, but specifically before the famine begins.
And the parallel is what exactly?
Some theologians view this as a pattern for the pre-tribulation rapture. The idea is that Christ, the greater Joseph, takes his bride, the church often referred to as the Gentile bride, out of the world before the tribulation.
Which is represented by the 7-year famine.
Exactly. It is a specific interpretive framework, but it shows just how deep people dive into these narrative structures. Every detail, from the timing of the marriage to the timing of the famine, is scrutinized for profound meaning.
It really is a dense forest of symbols. So let's try to pull this all together. We've gone from Egyptian dream rituals and the dream books to the deep psychological pain of Joseph saying, "Remember me."
We've looked at the forensic evidence of him being a type of Christ betrayed for silver, raised on the third day.
And we've grappled with the philosophy of work versus passive gain, and finally, the crushing necessary weight of that 2-year delay.
It's a story that feels ancient and incredibly modern at the exact same time. The feeling of being forgotten, the frustration of waiting on a promotion or a break that just doesn't come. That's universal.
It is, and it raises an important question for us today.
Going back to that Shabbat source about the nature of the dreams, the idea was that unholy things are those we get without work, the regression of the passive cows. Joseph's path was one of struggle, active work, and eventual elevation.
So the provocative thought I want to leave you with is this. In our age of instant gratification, where we can get almost anything delivered in 2 hours, are we acting more like Pharaoh and the baker? Do we want the result without the labor?
Or are we willing to be like Joseph? Can we see the spiritual value in the struggle and even in the delay? Can we trust that the work we are doing in the dark when no one remembers us is actually building something that will endure?
That is a tough question to chew on. 700 nights of waiting. But it eventually led to the palace.
It certainly did.
Well, next time you are stuck in a waiting room or waiting for a callback that isn't coming, remember this deep dive. Remember Joseph. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.